A lot more stores closing right now than there are stores opening. And this is according to data from CoreSite Research. It expects that number will continue to grow.
Picture this. You're driving the same stretch of road you've driven your whole life. Same turn, same parking lot, same automatic door that slides open before you even get to it. You know this place. You've been coming here since you were a kid, riding in the back seat. And one morning, the lights are off. There's a paper sign on the door. It says, "Permanently closed." No warning, no farewell sale. No last chance to grab what you needed, just gone. That's not a worst-case scenario anymore. That is Tuesday in 2026. More than 8,000 retail locations went dark in 2025. And this year is tracking to be worse, not slower, worse. I put together the 12 retailers closing stores the fastest right now. Some of these names you'll see coming. Others will genuinely surprise you, and the ones at the top of this list, those are not about shopping. Those are about what happens when the last store in your town turns off the lights. Let's get into it. But before we do, if you've been watching this channel and you haven't subscribed yet, Retail Reality is where we follow the money and tell you what's actually happening before it hits the news. Hit subscribe real quick. Now let's go. Number 12, Dollar General. Here is the thing about Dollar General that makes this so strange. This was supposed to be the one chain that could never close. The chain that went everywhere nobody else would go. Rural highways, forgotten towns, places where the nearest Walmart is a 30-minute drive, and the nearest anything else is even farther. Dollar General planted a flag in those communities when every other retailer had already packed up and left. And now they are shutting stores down in the same communities they were supposed to serve. How does that happen? The operating numbers tell you. Profit dropped nearly 50% in a single quarter, close to 100 locations shuttered, plus another batch of their pop-shelf concept stores gone. And on top of all that, the company has racked up more than $20 million in federal workplace safety violations, blocked exits, aisles so packed with unprocessed freight that moving through them required actual effort, stores so understaffed that a single employee was sometimes running the entire operation alone. The federal government put Dollar General on the OSHA Severe Violator list. That is a designation you genuinely do not want. It means regulators consider you a repeat offender with no credible plan to fix the problem. You should not need to brace yourself walking into a store to buy dish soap, and yet here we are. Now, here is where it gets complicated. Dollar General is still opening hundreds of new locations this year, but look at where those new stores are going. Wealthier suburbs, denser markets, places with higher margins and more foot traffic. The communities that built Dollar General's identity, the ones that depend on it most, those are the ones losing stores. When the chain that was created to serve people with no other options decides those people are too expensive to serve, that is not a business decision. That is abandonment with a corporate logo on it. Number 11, Eddie Bauer. There is a specific kind of trust that builds up between a person and a piece of clothing that has lasted 20 years. A jacket that survived everything. That was always the promise behind Eddie Bauer. The man who founded the company literally invented the quilted down jacket. He patented it in 1940. Your grandparents wore Eddie Bauer. Your parents wore Eddie Bauer. The brand survived 3 separate bankruptcies over a century of existence. It outlasted wars and recessions and every trend that came and went in between. Now, in 2026, every single one of its approximately 200 stores is preparing to close. Not struggling, not restructuring, closing. The brand is currently owned by a holding company called Catalyst Brands, which has connections to some of the biggest names in retail real estate, and a fast fashion app from China called Shein. The same platform known for selling $4 tops is now connected to the company controlling an American outdoor brand that spent 106 years building something real. The playbook here is not complicated once you have seen it. Take the intellectual property, license the name, hand online sales to a third-party operator, let the physical stores die quietly. You will still see the Eddie Bauer label. It will show up on products somewhere. But the store where you could walk in, feel the jacket, talk to someone who actually knew what a layering system was, that is gone. The brand survives as a logo. The thing the logo was attached to does not. Number 10, Forever 21. Forever 21 already had its funeral. It filed for bankruptcy in 2019. Hundreds of stores were lost. New investors came in and said they had a plan, a turnaround, a second act. 4 years later, the second act was also a disaster. The company filed again in early 2025 and this time went straight to liquidation. No reorganization, no attempt to rebuild. Every remaining US location closed. The physical presence of Forever 21 in this country is now zero. What actually killed it is worth understanding because it is not really a Forever 21 story. While the chain was selling $15 tops inside shopping malls with all the overhead that comes with that, Shein was selling $3 tops on a phone screen. No rent, no fitting rooms, no parking structures, no mall management fees. Just an algorithm that figured out exactly what its customer wanted, and a supply chain that could deliver it faster than anyone believed possible. There was no way to compete with that inside a mall. But here is the part that makes your head spin a little. The brand name Forever 21 is now owned by Authentic Brands Group, the same company connected to Eddie Bauer, both sitting under Catalyst Brands, which has ties to Shein. The company that made Forever 21's business model impossible is now a stakeholder in the entity that owns what is left of the brand. The predator and the carcass are at the same table. If you want to understand how retail works in 2026, that sentence is the whole lesson right there. Number 9. GameStop. There was probably a specific night with GameStop, a midnight launch, a line out the door, your kid in the passenger seat with a new case cracking open on the drive home. That version of GameStop peaked a long time ago, and what replaced it is barely recognizable. GameStop currently leads the entire country in planned store closures heading into 2026. Over 470 locations have been shut down in recent rounds of cuts. At their high point, the chain had more than 5,000 stores. The number today is well below 4,000 and still shrinking. Stores that used to draw crowds now sit filled mostly with collectible figures and very few customers. And the underlying problem cannot be solved with cash reserves or a viral stock moment. The product is disappearing. Every major gaming platform pushes digital downloads. A new game shows up on your console the same way a text message shows up on your phone. Silently, instantly, no trip to a store required. When what you sell can be delivered invisibly, the building you sell it from becomes a monument to a different era. GameStop is not a comeback story. It is a very expensive reminder of what happens when the thing a store is built around stops requiring a store. Number 8. Joann. If you have ever walked into a Joann store, you probably remember the specific smell of it. Bolts of fabric, craft adhesive, seasonal decor, thread in every color imaginable. And you probably remember the people working the cutting counter, the ones who measured your fabric and asked what you were making and actually wanted to know the answer. They remembered repeat customers. They were part of the ritual of the place. That is gone now. All 800 locations. Joann filed for bankruptcy twice. The first time in early 2024, attempting to restructure and survive. It did not hold. The second filing moved directly to liquidation. Every store went dark by 2025. And here is what makes this one particularly frustrating. The customers did not leave. Millions of people in this country still sew, quilt, knit, and craft. The demand was entirely real. What was not survivable was over $1 billion in debt, loaded onto the company by a private equity firm that acquired it through a leveraged buyout in 2011. For more than a decade, Joann tried to pay down that debt while competing with Amazon, with Hobby Lobby, with every specialty website that ever sold a spool of thread. The customers kept showing up every week. The balance sheet did not care. Private equity firms take management fees whether the company lives or dies. The people who loaded Joann with that debt collected their fees and moved on. The woman at the cutting counter who remembered your name lost her job. That is how the math actually worked out. Number 7. Dollar Tree and Family Dollar. Dollar stores exist for one reason. When there is no margin left anywhere else in your life, when every dollar counts in a way that is genuinely stressful. These are the stores that are supposed to be there, the last rung, the bottom of the retail ladder. And what is happening inside this model right now is grimmer than most people realize. Dollar Tree built its entire identity on a single concept. Everything costs $1. Then it became $1.25, then more. The founding promise of the brand is functionally broken, but the broken promise is not even the most alarming part of this story. Dollar Tree's sister chain, Family Dollar, had a distribution warehouse in West Memphis, Arkansas. Federal inspectors from the FDA walked in for a routine inspection and found conditions that were genuinely difficult to comprehend. More than 1,100 dead rodents inside a facility that was actively storing food, medicine, and household products destined for hundreds of stores across the South and Midwest. That is not a slip in cleanliness. That is a failure so complete, it is almost hard to categorize. Massive product recalls followed. More than 400 Family Dollar locations closed temporarily. Dollar Tree has now shut down or converted over 600 Family Dollar stores, with more closures planned through this year. The entire dollar store model is under structural pressure. Suppliers cannot produce goods worth buying at the price points these stores require. Not with current inflation, not with current shipping and input costs. Either the prices rise and destroy the brand promise, or the quality drops through the floor. These stores are supposed to be where you go when you cannot afford to go anywhere else. When even that option starts breaking, there is nothing cheaper waiting underneath. Number 6. JCPenney. Nobody in a boardroom presentation is going to say this plainly, so I will. JCPenney in 2026 is not really operating as a department store. It is being kept alive for someone else's benefit. The simple version of the JCPenney story is that department stores are dying because of online shopping. That story is technically true and almost completely misleading. JCPenney came out of bankruptcy in 2020. The companies that rescued it were not retailers. They were Simon Property Group and Brookfield, two of the largest mall landlords in the United States. They did not buy JCPenney because they believed in the future of department stores. They bought it because when an anchor tenant like Penny's closes, the entire mall around it starts to collapse. Foot traffic drops, other tenants leave, the building slowly dies. Keeping JCPenney breathing keeps the landlord's real estate valuable. The store exists to serve the property, not the customer. And now, JCPenney is part of Catalyst Brands, the same holding company we discussed with Eddie Bauer, the same entity that analysts have described as treating brand management like financial engineering. Walk into a JCPenney today and you can feel it. Sparse inventory, skeleton-level staffing, whole sections that look like someone started setting them up and then quietly left. If you have walked through one recently and felt like something was fundamentally off, you were picking up on something real. The store is not being run like a business that expects to be open in 10 years. It is being maintained just well enough to protect someone else's investment. Number 5. Saks Global and Saks Off Fifth. If you needed proof that even the luxury tier is not immune, Saks just provided it in spectacular fashion. In late 2024, Saks Fifth Avenue acquired Neiman Marcus for $2.5 billion. The deal created a luxury department store empire on paper. Saks, Neiman Marcus, and Bergdorf Goodman, all under one corporate structure. 13 months after closing that deal, the company filed for bankruptcy. Within 2 weeks of the filing, they announced the closure of 57 out of 69 Saks Off Fifth locations, all 5 remaining Neiman Marcus last call outlets, and the complete shutdown of the Off Fifth website. Here is what went wrong. The debt from the acquisition was enormous. To manage the payments, the company changed how and when it paid its vendors. It essentially told the designers and labels that supply its shelves that payment would arrive on a new, slower schedule. The vendors responded by stopping shipments, and a luxury department store with empty racks where premium brands used to hang is not a luxury department store anymore. Customers walked in, saw the gaps, and walked back out. 13 months from acquisition to bankruptcy filing, $2.5 billion in debt. At that pace, it is not a business strategy. It is a collapse wearing an expensive watch. What Saks demonstrated is simpler than any business school case study. The top shelf is not made of different material than everything else. It can be just as hollow underneath. Number 4, Macy's. Macy's is not dying. That is the wrong frame entirely. What Macy's is actually doing is making a deliberate decision about which communities are worth keeping. 50 stores went in 2024, 66 more in 2025, up to 150 closures planned across a 3-year window. And the locations being cut are not random. Macy's has identified roughly 350 stores it considers worth investing in. Those stores are in wealthy zip codes, premium shopping districts, and high-traffic malls. They are getting renovations, new brand partnerships, and actual inventory investment. Everything outside that list is being phased out. The stores being shut down are overwhelmingly in mid-tier malls and middle-class communities. The exact locations where Macy's was the anchor, the place where your family went for back-to-school shopping, for holiday outfits, for the kind of shopping trip that was an actual event. If your local Macy's has not been renovated in years, if the brand mix looks dated, if the signage looks like it is from a different decade, that is not neglect. That is a signal. You are not on the list of zip codes the company has decided are worth keeping. Macy's is not closing because it is failing. It is closing your store because your neighborhood's income level does not justify the lease. When Macy's exits a mid-tier mall, the mall typically follows within a year or two. Foot traffic craters. Other tenants look for the exit. The food court empties out. What was once the center of a community's retail life becomes a problem to solve for local government. Corporate does not experience that consequence. You do. Number 3. Winn-Dixie and the regional grocery chains. You are standing in aisle 3 of a grocery store you have been in every single week for 30 years. You know exactly which cart pulls to the left. You know the fastest checkout lane. You have a routine here that is woven into the rhythm of your life. And on paper, that store may already be scheduled to close. The assumption that grocery is the one category that is too essential to fail is one of the most dangerous beliefs in retail right now. Winn-Dixie was a Southern institution for generations. Families in Florida, Georgia, Alabama, and Louisiana grew up in these stores. But Winn-Dixie no longer exists as an independent company. Its parent, Southeastern Grocers, was acquired by Aldi in 2023. Locations are being rebranded or eliminated. The name that meant something to so many communities is fading fast. And it is not just Winn-Dixie. Albertsons, the company behind Safeway, Vons, Shaw's, and Jewel Osco, spent years pursuing a massive merger with Kroger. Regulators blocked it. Albertsons is now sitting with its debt, its aging stores, and no clear path forward. Individual closures are happening quietly under language like portfolio optimization and network restructuring. In New England, a Shaw's closure can mean a town loses the only place within a reasonable drive where you could pick up a decent piece of fish on a Thursday. Amazon Fresh, which was supposed to be the technology industry's answer to grocery retail, is shutting down its remaining physical locations. The company that rewired how people buy almost everything could not make a physical grocery store work. Here is the part the national news tends to skip over. When a grocery store closes in a rural or semi-rural community, the backup option is not 5 minutes away. It is often 25 minutes away. For a 75-year-old who does not drive at night in January on back roads, that is not an inconvenience. That is a genuine hardship. Grocery operates on margins so thin they are almost theoretical. Servicing significant debt in a market being squeezed by inflation, fuel costs, and competitors who operate at a scale that changes the entire game. The one category you assumed was safe is actually one of the most fragile in American retail. Number 2, Kroger. Kroger is the largest traditional supermarket chain in the country. For most people, it is just there. Reliable, familiar, the grocery store you shop at without giving it much thought. Now is a good time to start thinking about it. The merger with Albertsons was supposed to be the defining move of Kroger's modern era, a $24 billion deal to create a grocery giant with the scale to compete with Walmart and Amazon. A federal judge killed it. The deal produced nothing, no combined operation, no strategic advantage, just years of management attention, legal fees, and restructuring conversation that ended with Kroger back in the same position it started, competing against massive discount retailers and technology companies with the same store footprint and the same margin pressures. Now they are trimming. No press conference announcing it. No dramatic statement about the future. Individual stores disappearing one at a time in markets where the numbers do not justify the lease renewal. The language used in earnings calls does not say closing stores. It says things like optimizing the network and rationalizing the portfolio. The meaning is the same. And if you are a regular Kroger shopper, you have already felt the other side of this. The cart that used to run $70 is now pushing $90, and you did not change what you put in it. You start doing the mental math on how far the Aldi is and whether the savings justify the extra driving. In 2026, expect quiet closures in markets where Kroger is number 2 or 3 in share. No warning shot. 1 week, the store is there. The next week, there is a handwritten note on the door and a phone number to call about transferring your prescriptions. Number 1, Walmart, CVS, and Walgreens. Nobody worries about these 3, and that is precisely the problem. Walmart is not going to close. Walgreens is everywhere. CVS is on every corner. These are the ones that are supposed to outlast everything else. The retailers so large and so deeply embedded in daily American life that imagining them gone from your town feels genuinely impossible. That belief is what makes what is actually happening so serious. Think about what these 3 chains replaced. Your town used to have an independent pharmacy where the pharmacist knew your name and your medical history and called you when something looked off on a refill. CVS and Walgreens replaced that. Your town used to have a general store, a local grocer, a hardware shop. Walmart replaced all of that. When the original local infrastructure was gone, these 3 chains became the infrastructure. And now they are quietly pulling back. Walmart is closing individual locations in smaller and less profitable markets. No headlines, no drama. Just a dark building where the only full-service retail option in a 50-mile radius used to be. The communities that feel it are the ones that cannot easily drive 30 miles to the next option. CVS has closed more than 900 locations in the span of 3 years, and the cuts are still ongoing. Every prescription that was being filled at a closed location gets absorbed by whichever CVS is still open nearby. Same number of pharmacists, dramatically more volume. The error rates that have shown up in federal complaints from understaffed locations are not random. They are what happens when the workload is designed for a different pharmacy that no longer exists. Walgreens announced the closure of 1,200 stores. representing roughly 13% of its entire operation. 1 in 8 Walgreens locations erased from the map. The company is also navigating the financial consequences of opioid-related legal settlements and a takeover by a private equity firm. When the second largest pharmacy chain in the country is removing 1 in 8 of its own stores, the press releases about community commitment do not mean what they are intended to sound like, and Rite Aid is already completely gone. Every single one of its approximately 1,300 locations closed. Now set all of this on one map at the same time. Walmart trimming towns that do not generate sufficient return. CVS stretched beyond its operating capacity in the locations that remain. Walgreens pulling out of 1 in 8 communities entirely. Rite Aid already gone from all of them. You stop looking at retail closures and start looking at entire counties where there is no pharmacy, no full-service grocery, no place within a reasonable distance to buy what a family needs on a Tuesday. 48 million Americans are already living in what researchers classify as pharmacy deserts. 9 out of 10 adults over 65 take at least one prescription medication regularly. Between 7,000 and 9,000 Americans die every year from medication errors, and those errors become more common when the pharmacist filling your prescription is also covering the volume from 2 or 3 stores that closed. The analysts covering these companies use phrases like underperforming assets and network optimization. What that actually looks like in someone's life is an 80-year-old driving 40 minutes in winter weather to refill a blood pressure prescription, because the pharmacy that used to be 10 minutes away is now a dark building with a paper sign on the door. It looks like splitting pills in half to stretch a refill. It looks like realizing that the last grocery, the last pharmacy, and the last general retailer in your corner of the country all closed within the same 18 months, and nobody in a major city noticed or reported on it. We built the modern American retail system by replacing local shops with national chains. That replacement layer is now eroding from the inside. And unlike the first replacement, there is no next layer coming. Nothing is being built to fill these gaps. The independent pharmacy on Main Street that CVS replaced is not coming back. The local grocer that Walmart drove out is not reopening. The infrastructure that those original stores provided has been gone for decades. What replaced it is now leaving too. This week, if you take regular medications, write down where you fill them and find out whether that location has been flagged for closure. Talk to your doctor about 90-day supplies or mail order options before you need them. Find out which independent pharmacy is closest to you, because independent pharmacies have actually been gaining ground as the chains pull back. Know your secondary grocery option before your primary one closes. Not the store you prefer, the store you would actually use tomorrow if yours disappeared. And learn the signs. Reduced hours without explanation. Chronic out-of-stocks on items that used to always be there. Staffing levels that are visibly lower than they used to be. Those are not isolated quirks. Those are the countdown running. 12 retailers, thousands of stores, millions of people whose daily routines are built around places that may not be there much longer. And here's the thing that should sit with you. This is the list for 2026. The decisions that will define the 2027 list are being made right now in rooms you will never be in by executives who will never drive through your town. By the time a closure makes the local news, the lease is already canceled. The distribution contracts are already unwound. The locks are already ordered. The America where your grocery store, your pharmacy, and your general store were all within a 10-minute drive was built over decades. It is being disassembled one store at a time, neighborhood by neighborhood, with no announcement and no plan for what comes next. Tell me in the comments which of these chains matters most to your town. Which one is already gone from where you live? I read all of it, and if you want to understand where the rest of this is heading, the video YouTube is showing you right now goes even deeper. Subscribe, hit the bell. You know the drill.